And today we're going to talk about self-awareness. Welcome to Six Train Therapy. I'm DJ Mayday.
I'm Professor S, your therapist of the stars.
AKA Keeper of the Mind Stone. AKA Suffering Succotash.
It's Stephen Welch, psychotherapist.
And welcome to another episode of Six Train Therapy.
Yeah, man.
And today we're going to talk about self-awareness.
Can we say one thing before
Absolutely.
we go? We have a new addition here. We have a Puerto Rican flag and a Barbadian flag, or as they say, a Bajan flag, B-A-J-A-N. And so we're representing our islands that we come from culturally, spiritually, and so on. So Puerto Rican, Barbados. Excuse me, Puerto Rico, Barbados.
In the house.
Yes.
So, in framing the topic, you're not going to do it?
Go ahead.
Being self-aware is all about having the understanding of your own thoughts, feelings, values, beliefs, and actions. Self-awareness. Thanks. Self-awareness is trippy. It's so trippy because for me personally, just as I think I know myself, it's like myself takes two steps to the side, and I'm once again,
Well, self-awareness is an
myself
ongoing thing, right? Self-awareness is ongoing. And the way that we're going to, I guess, frame or continue to talk about this is under the focus of like therapy and things that create more self-awareness. And what we're going to talk about is just things that, help create that. So
yeah, well,
right?
I think like all the stuff that we talk about and just the stuff that we read is like self-awareness. It has to begin as you're doing therapy, or else how can you click into therapy?
Well, the thing is like, okay, let's say you have an argument with your partner, and she says, "You don't listen to me." Like one of the things that we saw, you're not listening to me right now. And then you realize, oh shit, I don't listen to her. You become self-aware in the midst of the issue that you're becoming, that you didn't realize it was that bad. So that might encourage you to call a therapist or speak to a friend. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but like when I was like saying like in the sense of therapy, like even to get to that point where you actually go to therapy, right?
Oh, okay,
that's different. You have to be like, all right, I got a problem, and let me get there, and that takes a level of self-awareness.
That's true.
And
a willingness.
And a willingness, self-awareness, and and like I said before, like the goalpost is always moving back. As soon as I think I'm self-aware, I realize how not self-aware I am.
Right.
Again, doing the research for this episode, I was like, oh damn, I'm about half of not self-aware.
Good research.
I
could have told you that.
I didn't know. I'm about half not self-aware and half self-aware. So I don't even know if that makes sense, but just based on all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somewhat, but it's so tricky.
Well, it's a constant thing. I mean, like for example, I'm fat, even though you can't see. And the reason why I'm saying that, he's just, I'm not obese, but according to the standards and my physical appearance.
You're gonna drag this. It's just so crazy that you're dragging this into this.
We'll probably edit this shit out.
Oh, go.
But I took my BMI, body mass index. I look at for my height, for my gender, what is my weight supposed to be? I'm like 20 pounds over that. Even though BMI is not the only measure of your body fat, etc. It is one small thing. So this goes back to awareness, right? I'm
You're tying this in.
I'm tying this all into self-awareness, right? And so with BMI, for example, it doesn't include the cultural differences. Like if you're African American and compared to European, the BMI is slanted more towards a heavier side, but it doesn't mean they're not healthy.
Right.
Right. It doesn't mean the same. But anyway, so for me personally, after I did some of the investigation around my health and so on, and the body mass index and blah, 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 I realized that I'm very sedentary. I don't move around a lot. I work from home. So the awareness now is that I really need to move more because there's data, there's information, and then I can follow. I'm in therapy as a therapist. I'm in therapy, so I can now discuss that with my therapist as to what are the other reasons why I'm not moving around a lot. So I did tie it together, my overweightness.
Right. But it's
awareness.
Right, but it was the thing we talked about before that you.
What is that? Finding something else to obsess over?
Yeah.
So now I'm fat. Before it was the lighting. I didn't have great lighting, and now the dark skinned brother, and now it's all set up. Now I gotta find something else to do.
He's got something else to
fill in the time.
No, but I get what you're saying. I get what you're doing, but that awareness is tricky, man.
It is.
That is very tricky because
it is.
You walk down that road and, like, for instance, in confrontations or in situations with family or at work or whatever, your awareness of what is going on and being able to just stay calm is so tricky. Like I find myself able to stay calm at work where I'm not able to stay calm at home.
Oh, okay.
So I find myself.
Because you don't want to lose your job.
I don't want to lose my job. But I could lose my home, my life, my whole family if I, wild out too hard. So
yeah, she loves you.
Yeah, I know.
Your family loves you. Yeah.
But it's that, you know what I mean? Like I'm able to kind of like, so I'm being
manage.
Two people almost.
Yes.
With
manage. Yeah.
Different self-awareness.
Yeah.
And
so that's interesting because our partners can let us know, make us aware of what we're doing, what we're not doing, right? So if you argue a lot, your partner can say, you're arguing a lot over a specific thing, right? So that brings it to your attention. The other thing too is sometimes we don't realize things that really bother us, right? From our childhood, and we don't really think it's a thing, So for example, generally, one of the biggest stressors in our lives is the death of someone. That's a big stressor, and sometimes we're not. We think we've gotten over the death, but we really haven't. And so something could happen. Like my mom passed away. Let's say, I think December of X amount of years ago. So when December comes around, recently this past December, a family member sent me a picture of her headstone, and I hadn't seen that in a long time. And it caused me to remember, oh my God, she's gone. So now it's come to my attention again. So,
but do do you really fully ever get over that? Thankfully, I haven't lost anybody that's that close to me yet.
I think there's various stages to loss. You can feel a loss 10 years from now, or you could feel a loss 10 minutes from now, from whatever reason. There's there's various triggers and so on. But even divorce is a big stressor. The end of a relationship, divorce, that is one of the top stressors too. Even moving, if you move from one place to another, have to pull up all your stuff, those are very high stressors, and they might even seem like big deals, but they really are, especially when you have all these things together. A major illness, if you have to take care of somebody over a long period of time, or you yourself have a major illness that kind of drags on, members have to get involved, family members have to get involved, you have to get involved, organize your time. That's a big stressor. And also even the loss of a job is a big stressful. Even starting a new job, that can also be very stressful, So
I could speak to that.
What happened?
I'm just saying, since the pandemic, I was working at a place for a long time. Things changed when the pandemic came, right? And for a lot of people.
Right.
So I wound up bouncing around a little bit after the pandemic, and during the pandemic and after the pandemic, online, at home.
That was very stressful. Right?
Yeah. Oh my God. Because you don't know. You don't know. You can't make plans, right? You can't.
Right.
You can't say for sure that this can happen or that can happen.
And that's the other thing, right? The pandemic made us so vulnerable in so many different ways, right?
Yeah.
Ways that we didn't even realize that we would feel that way.
Yeah, our social society structure
Completely
was
changed.
very fragile.
Yeah.
More fragile than I thought it was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, that was very stressful. I tried to stay calm through most of it. I mean, the beginning, not so much. I wasn't able to. But as it kind of wore on, I tried to kind of like pick up the pieces and kind of just keep going. But it's tough, man.
Yeah,
And it leaves little scars, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It leaves little scars moving forward. So,
Like, what if it happens again?
exactly.
Or how do I have a contingency plan if it does happen again?
Yeah.
So those are very big stressors, and so also having a baby, you know, having a baby is also very, very stressful. And so whether it's mom, the dad, family, I mean, there's a whole structural shift. But my point is saying all these things, you may not think they're that problematic over time, right? Especially when you've had multiple events like those. And the ones I mentioned are very high under stress levels when they do studies and so on. These are big moves. And sometimes we say, oh, okay, I got a new job. Okay, it's stressful, whatever. But it really can be very, very stressful. And then we bring those stresses home to our relationship.
and I'm going to say something about starting a new job because I'm telling you like a couple of times in the last 4 years. So every time you start a new job, you got to reprove yourself.
True.
You're not. I don't want to say watch in a negative way, but everybody wants
best
curious to
behavior.
see what you're about, how you're doing, whatever.
Yeah.
So that whole thing, doing that multiple times, keep proving yourself, especially if you've been in an industry or in a particular kind of job for a long time. It's just like, again, I got to prove myself. I got to pretend.
Right.
I don't know. Not that I don't know what I'm doing, but I don't know what's going on. I got to pretend. I got to perform.
Fit in. Yeah,
It's very performative. A lot of
the
it.
performance anxiety too. You
Yeah.
want to meet the needs of the organization and also what you sold in your interview.
Right. So it's like a whole dance that it feels unnecessary because you shouldn't have to reprove yourself, but you wind up having to do it.
Right. And those are stressful. And those are stressors that's a good example of something coming to your awareness, right? That's an awareness that I'm performing or I'm starting all over again. And so once we become aware of things, then we have to figure out how to manage them, right?
Can I go through like, signs that you may lack?
Sure.
Self-awareness, because I think it's important. Just a little bit of red flags that lets you know, well, oh shit, maybe I'm not as self-aware as I thought I was. So there's 10 here. I'm going to go through a couple that I feel strongly about. I think it's too much to go through 10, but you have trouble understanding your own emotions. That's kind of huge, where you're just either mad and you can't even explain to yourself why you're mad, or sad and you can't explain to yourself why you're sad. You shut people down when they question your beliefs. So you don't even want to have to defend your beliefs.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's what you believe.
Right.
You can't be wrong. You know
Right.
what I mean? So there's a lot of like pushing away maybe reality on some levels, or perceived reality,
Yeah.
You make excuses for your failures. This is a one that I was like, damn, I used to do that a lot. There was always somebody else to blame for my personal failures. You know
I've
what I
seen
mean?
you do that with me. Yeah,
Oh,
sure.
out of here! I never did that with you. But it would be like I'm sorry, that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Excessive sorries and this and that. I've gotten a lot better at that.
Yeah, that is something that you used to do here with our fledgling podcast.
Right.
You don't do it anymore.
No, I don't do that anymore. You can't explain the reasons for your actions. Like you can't explain yourself. You can't, because you truly can't justify it. Maybe because you might not understand,
or you're defensive. You don't want to say what it is. Like, why are you asking me these things?
Right. Exactly. You don't have to explain yourself because it would peel back the onion to your
Because now
you
you
being wrong.
Other
maybe.
things. That's right. Maybe we could do one more.
Yeah, we'll do one more. It's hard. It's hard for you to make realistic goals. That one I thought was interesting, and that one too I felt like I had.
Okay.
You know, I would shoot for the stars.
Yeah.
And
so there's a lack of awareness as to like how real are things, like being reality based.
Right, realistic, but without also crushing your goals, your dreams, so to speak. Right. So that was another one. And there's a whole bunch more. I'll list them in the description below so you guys can kind of take a look at all 10. But these are helpful signs to, maybe you can relate to or not relate to, and it can give you an idea of how aware you actually are. So these were signs you lack self-awareness.
So can I talk a little bit about the barriers for going into therapy, right? So, when we talk about therapy to help us become more aware, there are some barriers to it, right? So, for example, stigma. A lot of people of color, or just people in general, but a lot of people of color have a stigma against therapy, right? They don't want to be perceived as weak, or, this is for white people. There's all these things. So we end up kind of operating with a certain level of stress or anger or sadness, and there's a resource for us, and then we choose not to do it because we have these ideas about it. And a couple of things is that if ethnicity or gender is an issue, or sexual orientation, there are therapists that are in all these different areas. It's just a matter of doing some research and finding the right clinician. You could do searches for clinicians who work with gay women who have children. There are therapists that specialize in those things. So that's a potential barrier.
Well, I have a short video that we scraped from the internet again. So I want to play it real quick. And it's kind of, alluding to what Professor S. Stephen was talking about.
Therapy was really important. It really helps you deal with it, because it was weird. I remember the day when I realized I needed therapy. I was I was dealing with my kids at school, and I came home and my wife said, "Did you hear about that kid who got shot on Southside? Like a 4-year-old that got shot?" And I was like, "Yeah, that happens." And then I was like, "Wait a minute. That's not a normal reaction that you're supposed to have to that sort of news." But what it was I had internalized so much of the trauma that my kids go through, and they tell me every day, that I had just become jaded on my view of the world. And that's not a normal response. And so that's when I realized I need to start doing things to take care of my mental health. And I realized I was being a hypocrite, because my kids, sometimes they get sentenced to anger management, counseling, and different things. And I'm telling them they need to take it seriously, but then I'm not being serious about it. And so, to actually share the story with them of counseling, just hoping to break that stigma we have in our communities that counseling is for crazy people, or counseling isn't, for you, we suck it up, or pray on it. That's one thing in our community is like, yeah, we can pray on it, but we also can get a good counselor to help us with our issues as well. And so it's really important that we start taking mental health seriously in our community. Therapy was really important. It really helps you.
I think that's a great example of some of the barriers. So, for example, the pray about it is another. You're biting your finger, sir.
No,
and edit that out.
No, they're not going to see that. I was going to zoom in on you.
Yeah. Okay. So we still got to edit it down. So yeah, he spoke about stigma very, very well, and also how even as a teacher or counselor, whatever his role is, he also kind of minimized what his kids were experiencing, or himself, and that he's a human being. This is what happens when you constantly hear of negative things in your community. So a lot of times denial is part of why you don't go to therapy. Like, there's nothing wrong with me, right? Mm-hmm. Even though family members could say, hey, you're drinking too much, or people can say, you're looking kind of down these days. And you could say, well, it's no big deal. I'll get over it. Don't worry about it.
I think with him, though, what struck me was that he recognized, whoa, I'm being a hypocrite. Like, I'm not sure what he does exactly, but he says he sends kids off to therapy and anger management and all that stuff. So he recognized, wow, I'm being, I have a problem. I'm being dismissive.
Right. He's also being
his own personal pain.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So, again, that was the self-awareness. Something he just it just triggered him to get help. So, I mean,
and it took the kids to really, that experience with the kids to bring that awareness up. So I think anything can trigger different forms of self-awareness, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
So another barrier is gender, right? So a lot of men do not feel comfortable going to counseling. It's like, we're strong. We talk to our boys at the barbershop. Like, that's not really sharing your thoughts and feelings. But for men, it's a sign of weakness. While for women, they're much more used to talking to each other about problems or concerns, laughing together. Men are very isolated in our thoughts and feelings. So we try to act like we're tough, but sometimes we are crying inside. So that's another thing. Also, sometimes the shame. Sometimes we don't want to talk about certain things because we feel really bad about it. So like, let's say you physically assaulted in your youth or even as an adult, the idea of talking to somebody about that can be very, very hard. And who would listen to me and who would judge me and who would take it seriously? Or, you know, in your family didn't believe you or something like that. So why would somebody else outside your family, a stranger, believe you? So these are some of the barriers to going into therapy. So I'm just going to go over it. Stigma, denial. The part that I missed was drugs. Like if you go to a therapist, somehow they're going to recommend, antidepressants or some kind of pills that you might get hooked on. That's another barrier, which is so far from facts. A lot of times that's the last thing that a therapist would even suggest. So it may not even be discussed unless you bring it up. Then there may be some discussion.
And it's a little harder to actually get like those mental aids drugs than one would think, because yes, you have to get it, but you also have to go to a psychiatrist to prescribe it to you, or a nurse practitioner to prescribe it to you. So it's not just like
the therapist, because a therapist is usually not a doctor or a nurse practitioner. So that you'd have to be referred.
Right, yeah. But there's no risk of like, let's say like, jumping the gun. Your therapist is going to really walk you through it.
It's a discussion, It's an absolute discussion, and it's going to be driven by whatever you feel you need. The only thing a therapist can do is kind of recommend or look at different options and so on. Some therapists or other clinicians will recommend something more holistic. Even improving your sleep can help your overall wellness, your mental wellness. So, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you mind if I run down, some things that people who are self-aware actually do? Mm-hmm. So maybe if you feel like you haven't been doing these things, maybe you can do these things. So, number one is choosing your words wisely. I think that sounds like common sense, but
it's not. Sometimes it's not what you say; it's how you say it as well.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. But it's just choosing your words wisely. Not saying that you don't speak up or say or talk up, but just think about your words as you're saying them, or just before you're saying them, and kind of clearing them through your mind, so that you're not hurting people's feelings carelessly.
It also helps to take deep breaths before you say something that might be very loaded.
Yeah, like a pause.
Like 3 deep breaths, or excuse yourself for a moment and come back to it. That can sometimes de-escalate your feelings. Go ahead.
Another one is like, you're not afraid of new ideas. Like people bringing new ideas to you, maybe changing your mind or adding on to whatever is happening in your life, thought process is happening in your life. Another one is that you manage your time well. If you're a self-aware person, you manage your time well. Doesn't mean you're perfect, but it's something that you're good at doing because you know your limitations.
And also being on time for appointments and for your friends, like it's really important, like consider other people's time.
Absolutely. So this was one that was interesting to me that I didn't really think about, and I never do. Like,
you never think?
No, I think, but I never think of this thing.
Okay.
Journaling.
Oh, yeah.
Like journaling, and part of the journaling is like you write it down. The thought comes out. It's almost as if you're saying it, and it becomes more real, so to speak, I guess. You know what I mean? But journaling, as a self-aware person, that's one thing that they do. They journal something. They may come back to it as they continue journaling, revisit that thing that they said that they wrote, and kind of reevaluate whatever that was. So those are interesting things, because sometimes you get pissed, you don't even know why you're pissed anymore. Right. Then you keep getting pissed, and now you're doubly pissed or upset or sad or whatever it is, and you don't even realize why you're mad, anymore.
And also with your journaling, sometimes when you look back, maybe a week, a month, 6 months, you realize, oh my God, this is still an issue for me. Or look how much progress that I've made in this area.
Right.
So it gives you something to check yourself.
Another thing which was interesting, and I read this one and I was like, this is one I'm teetering on the not so good, is practicing patience. Like
boy.
a person with self-awareness practices patience, meaning you step away from, for instance, if someone says something that might offend you or excite you, you take a moment, you literally take a moment and calm down. Those things that make you mad, if your first response can be step away, I mean, that's a mastery of self, I feel like.
Sometimes you have to actually literally walk away from a conflict or pause it. Like, can we continue this at 4 o'clock? Let's say you're talking about at noon. Let's continue this at 4 o'clock or the next day. Something to de-escalate, but also let that person know we are going to come back to it, as opposed to whenever, we'll talk about it at some other time. Some other time is one of the worst things you could say in a communication. Come up with the specific time that you're going to talk about to close.
Okay, so just one more thing, which this one.
Oh my God.
Is a huge
more?
one. Yeah, this is a huge one of self-aware, things that people who are self-aware do, is you accept your failures.
Ooh, that's very good. That was worth adding in.
That was worth it.
Yeah.
And that one, that's a big one. Like being able to say to yourself, damn, I messed up. I really screwed that up.
That's big.
That's big. That's
huge.
big, and without judgment, right? Like doing it without judgment and like accepting that you're human, you make mistakes. Everybody's
and it's a vulnerable feeling too.
Yeah.
We don't always feel comfortable with vulnerability. Most of us don't.
Yeah, because if you say I messed up, there may be 5 people ready to jump on you and be like, yeah, you did, you screwed up.
Fucker, you've fucked up multiple times. I know it doesn't sound like a therapist, but you fucked up multiple times.
This is what I'm saying. Happened. So the tendency to admit a failure is just, I mean, it takes staggering courage, I feel like sometimes,
And also, we learn some of these communication styles through our families growing up.
Yeah.
So if you're not around, if you didn't have a parent that would say, you know what, I made a mistake. It can give you a sense like, oh, I can really make a mistake and still be loved by someone. Do you know what I mean? So that's the other piece too, how we saw communication with our parents or the adults in our lives in our formative years. You know what I mean?
So I have another video. I just want to play it real quick just so we can, because this this person's a therapist too, so, and he was just speaking on self-awareness, so I thought it was interesting.
You do know what I do for a living, right? Like, I'm a really good listener, so I don't know what you're talking about, And then I took this listening class. Turns out I'm an absolutely brilliant listener with people who I'll never see again for the rest of my life. But amongst my friends and family, appalling. So I had this basic skill set that I never applied with the people closest to me and gave myself an out because, quote unquote, I knew how to listen. And so I realized I was a terrible listener. This was a blind spot. This was a gap. That awareness of the blind spot and the awareness of the skills that I need to be a better brother, son, boyfriend, friend, I had to learn how to hold space for someone.
Holding space, yeah. Sometimes when we're in our own feelings, we don't think about holding space for the other person.
I was struck by the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of like ability of his, like he's some kind of therapist, and he's a great listener. That's kind of what he does for a living. That's what he was alluding to. But yet at home, he isn't. His girlfriend or whoever, his wife, I think, or girlfriend, said that he's a terrible listener. This is the thing, and I don't know. Like when I heard that, I was like, I kind of get it, but I don't get it. I get it. For instance, I'm an artist, and I can't tell you how many family members, friends, and everybody's asking me to do a friggin' a graphic for them, a drawing for them, a portrait or something, and I'm like, yeah,
I can't do it.
Yeah, I don't want to do it.
Me, yeah.
That sounds like work.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't want to do it. So I kind of get it.
It's a similar thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a similar. Like he turns off. He turns off his skills.
It's a professional role. But when you come out of that role, you're human. You're still, when you do it professionally, you're very aware of what you say can affect the other person, paying attention to the other person. It's a different, it's like, this is such a strange example. Like a lot of actors will talk about how when they work, they can take on the identities of the character, and it's exhausting for them because that's not who they are in real life. So that's for their job, but in real life, they have to get back to themselves. And so you're wearing two different hats. One is a professional hat, one is your private, and your private is where you're more fallible in many ways.
Well, it's interesting, right? Like for instance, you said you go to therapy.
Yes,
you're absolutely. A therapist who goes to therapy, but
which they recommend for any therapist, actually.
And priests, like priests are, supposed to be godly. You almost kind of expect them to be without sin. You know what I mean? Or a doctor, you expect them to know every single thing. This expectation on people, I think, is a little unrealistic. You know what I mean? And I think it's just interesting. Like they're who they are, and they do what they do, and they're good at what they do. But when the hat comes off, the professional hat comes off.
Even with doctors, one of the things they say, a doctor should not. Well, male doctors will not treat a family member.
Right.
Because they lose perspective.
They can't be impartial.
Impartial, right.
You know what I mean? Oh, my brother. My brother is like this. He's like a handyman extraordinaire as far as I'm concerned. And he has all kinds of licenses and this and that. He comes over every time he goes to somebody's house. Yo, can you fix my light switch? Right. Hey, yo, this leg on this chair.
Right. Can you take a look at this?
Right. And he gets to the point where he's like, I don't want to do this. Right. I don't even want to come to your house.
Right. Exactly. You know what I mean? It makes sense. So it's work all over again.
Yeah, so I kind of understand the perspective, but I also understand the perspective that he may want to use those tools in his most cherished relationships. You know what I mean? Like those tools may help him in his cherished relationship. And realizing the awareness that maybe he could tap those tools.
Right.
For a better.
Or just being aware why he doesn't want to work, do things for strangers or other family members. That's why you're getting upset. Do you know what I mean? Like become aware. So another form of self-awareness and self-care is therapy itself. So I think it's important to consider going to therapy to really take care of some of those things that are concerning you or that other people might think are concerning you. So it can be brought to your awareness. So did you want to say anything about that? Because I could just go on.
No, go for it.
So, some of the things that make therapy a helpful thing is that it's a private space. It's supposed to be a safe space for you to talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. Your sessions are confidential. Therapists cannot release information to anybody outside of, the relationship unless it's about you want to harm somebody or harm yourself. In those cases, we have to push confidentiality out the way legally, because that means a person's in a crisis. The other thing is, it's a good place to just express yourself about anything that may bother you. Also, support groups are really important. A lot of times when you do the one-on-one therapy, it's not as effective as if you have 5 people commenting on something that you need to be brought to your attention, to your awareness. So that's another thing about that. And then also, a therapist is not going to tell you what to do. A therapist is going to listen actively. They may help you look at some options of what you may want to consider, or share with you different aspects on how certain behavior can affect you or others, but they're not necessarily going to tell you what to do. So that's one of the advantages of therapy, and therapy as part of the bigger role or the bigger project of bringing things to your awareness.
So I think that's about it.
Yeah. Do you need anything to be brought to your awareness right now?
No, my awareness is good. Hey, by the way, did you see Usher's performance during the Super Bowl?
I did. I was not impressed.
Oh wow, that was hateful.
Once you brought that event to my awareness, I said, oh.
I thought it was good.
I'm not a fan. If it's Beyonce, Rihanna, those are fun performances. But this is what I did like about it was the roller skate. The roller skating was excellent. That was so unique. Nobody else is doing that at all. And all the skaters were really good.
Yeah, you know, I thought he was overall really good. I liked his guest. Lil Jon was there.
Yeah. That was cool.
Yeah, it was good. I thought it was good.
I think if you were an Usher fan, it was perfect.
Yeah, for sure. And thank God they didn't like pan to friggin' Taylor Swift. That would have upset me.
What was wrong with that?
I don't know. She should have no say in what Usher's doing.
Okay.
Well, anyway, so I'm DJ Mayday.
I'm Professor S.
Thank you for listening to Sixth String Therapy. Peace. Oh, don't forget to like,
comment,
and subscribe. Peace.